During a recent interview, Republican Senator and invertebrate Lindsey Graham had a meltdown trying to futilely defend Donald Trump's criminal behavior. Intrigued? Then click that like and subscribe and enjoy the video. So believe it or not, you may not know this, you may not remember this, but there was a time where, rightly or wrongly, Lindsey Graham enjoyed a relatively bipartisan reputation as a man of principle. Okay, he had close friendships among members of the Democratic Party, including Al Franken, the former Democratic senator who was once an SNL comedian. Al Franken still speaks of him relatively fondly to this day, although he laments the man who Lindsey Graham has become. He was also, Lindsey Graham, a strident, outspoken critic of Donald Trump during the 2015-2016 presidential election cycle when he ran against Donald Trump. But there are clips of him all over the internet, on Twitter and on public interviews, public speaking events. I mean, he said it repeatedly. Donald Trump is a racist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, a bigot, a religious bigot. He said famously on Twitter that if we elect Donald Trump, he will ruin us and we will have deserved it. And yet, despite those strong words of condemnation, Donald Trump eventually became the Republican nominee and then, of course, the president for 4 years. And Lindsey Graham apparently had a change of heart. And not only did he, it would have been one thing as a member of the Republican Party to reluctantly work with the leader of the Republican Party and the sitting president. That's one thing. That's understandable. But Lindsey Graham didn't do that. No, rather, Lindsey Graham became an equally fervent and equally vociferous supporter of Donald Trump, one of the most rabid and most active defenders of Donald Trump, not just his policies, but Donald Trump the person. And Lindsey Graham is rightly mocked for it, including by more moderate members of his own party, former members of his own party. And again, the disdain is completely earned because he traded whatever spine and soul and principle that he once had for the sake of political expedience. And I want to play a clip here because he did a recent interview on an ABC morning show with George Stephanopoulos. We're going to play 3 clips in which he further debased himself in the aftermath of the Trump indictment because, and you'll see from the very beginning, his expression right here, you can see that Lindsey Graham does not look forward to having to defend Trump in this regard, but he's a company man, and dang it, he's going to, if that means debasing himself and trying to offer some, very weak, tepid defense of the terrible things that Trump is accused of doing in the indictment, well then dang it, that's what he's going to do. So let's play some clips and unpack it.
Trump has said repeatedly that he did nothing wrong. Do you believe that?
Well, here's what I believe. We live in an America where if you're the Democratic candidate for president, Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State, you can set up a private server in your basement to conduct government business. And when an investigation is had about your activity, no, let me finish.
But you didn't answer the question.
That was ridiculous. Well, yeah, I'm trying to answer the question from a Republican point of view. That may not be acceptable on this show. Yeah.
All right, so that's hilarious, okay, because it's also educational, demonstrative of what the Republicans are going to do. Their first line of defense is a whataboutism. If you call them out for what Donald Trump did or what Donald Trump's accused of doing, even though he is their political leader, even though he was the president of the United States, even though he's running for president, again, the nation's highest office, higher even than a Secretary of State. This would be the Secretary of State's boss. Well, principle doesn't matter. It's whataboutism. Hillary Clinton engaged in some reckless mishandling of classified material, and she wasn't criminally indicted. Ergo, it's okay. Donald Trump can do whatever he wants, even though the facts are materially different. We know much more about the classified material that Donald Trump was in possession of, and the fact that it was classified is actually irrelevant to the indictment. It doesn't matter if Trump classified it or declassified it. It's the fact of the matter that he had sensitive U.S. government property in his possession that he was not entitled to have. He does not own those documents. They do not belong to him. And when the federal government says give them back, he is obligated, as any other Democratic former president or any other Republican former president, it doesn't matter, he's obligated to give them back. And he didn't. And he lied about it. And then he obstructed attempts to get them back by the federal government. So wildly different than the situation with Hillary Clinton. I want to play another clip here, and let's hear some more.
An audio tape of Donald Trump saying he knows this is secret information, he knows he's sharing it with other people. How is that okay?
I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's okay to take a hammer to a BlackBerry. I think none of this is okay.
So again, more whataboutism. And you can even hear the reluctance in his voice, right? When he says, I'm not saying it's okay. He doesn't want to be put in the position to call Donald Trump out for his behavior. Again, even if on principle, even if it were, certainly if it were a Democratic official, he would be shouting from the rooftops, condemning this person. But putting him in a position where it's like, okay, yes or no, are you supporting what Donald Trump did? He can't even say it was wrong. He has to go the more convoluted route and say, I'm not saying it's okay, which isn't quite the same as saying, no, it was wrong and disgusting and blah, 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 all these things. And I'll also point out in terms of smashing the phones, those were old phones, old BlackBerries that were no longer in use by Hillary Clinton or the State Department, and it was part of the protocol. Once new phones are procured for government officials, very often, if old phones are used for sensitive material by high-ranking officials, they're supposed to destroy the hardware just in case. But anyway, I want to play a third and final clip, and then we'll unpack that as well.
I've heard your attack on President Biden and his Justice Department. I've heard your attack on Hillary Clinton. I've heard your attack on Bill Clinton. What I've not heard from you is a defense of Donald Trump's behavior and why you think that's the kind of behavior you want to see in the President of the United States.
I'm not justifying his behavior. If it were up to me, nobody would take classified information.
But you're endorsing him for President of the United States. You're saying he should be President of the United States.
Yeah. I think what's happening here is trying to delegitimize him.
So again, very demonstrative. When that was Hillary Clinton, when Hillary Clinton did anything that was vaguely similar, according to Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Jim Jordan, James Comer, every Republican under the sun, that was disqualifying. Hillary Clinton's mishandling of classified material disqualified her as a valid presidential candidate in their mind. Meanwhile, Donald Trump does, at least as far as the facts are concerned, something far, 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 far worse, keeping sensitive national defense information pertaining to nuclear documents or nuclear weaponry, military capability, the weaknesses of the United States and our allies, all these things. The indictment just, it reads like something out of a political horror movie, if you're Trump. That doesn't disqualify him, right? There is a double standard here, and it's from the Republicans. Republican candidates can do whatever they want, whenever they want. And to the Republican Party, it's irrelevant. That's fine. It's whatever. I'm not saying it's okay, but what about this? What about this? What about that? Meanwhile, had it been done by a Democrat, they would have not only been disqualified, Lindsey Graham and others like him would be demanding that those people be imprisoned. It's a disgusting act of hypocrisy. Very typical for the Republican Party, but it's important to point out because you're going to see this. You're going to be inundated with these examples. This is not a party of principle. It's a party that pursues power at all costs, the Republican Party. And when you know that, when you realize that, when you accept it, then it should further inflame your support for the Democratic Party, because for all the Democratic Party's faults, at least they adhere somewhat to principle, certainly far more than the Republican Party. And anyway, this is disgusting, shameless, cowardly behavior of Lindsey Graham. So I guess kind of normal for Lindsey Graham.